G'day guys, you're welcome to my drunk philosophy. Googs here. Today I'm going to talk about Scott Morrison and the latest news poll and various things that have led to his falling numbers and possible future outcomes for the Liberal National Party. Today the news poll came out and it had Scott Morrison at 38% preferred Prime Minister and Albanese at 45. Now this is not necessarily career ending for our Prime Minister and it's not unrecoverable. Okay, we've had Prime Ministers dip this low before, but for a number of reasons of which I'll get into, it probably is either career ending for Scott Morrison or certainly the end of the Liberal National Party being the government of Australia. So why has his numbers dropped? Well, generally it's bad optics. It's not necessarily because he is actually doing bad things. Mind you, in the heat of a crisis, whoever's in charge at the time does tend to get a hammering. However, going to Hawaii, there's been some faux pas that he did in the media in general. He just doesn't look capable. Okay, and once again, this is not this is optics. This is not actually the fact that the state governments are in charge of their emergency services. So while he was on holidays, you still had the charge led there, a competent deputy prime minister who had already got the ball rolling on several things that Scott Morrison wanted her to get the ball rolling on. That's all fine, but it just looked terrible, and I think if they're going to teach politicians how to commit political suicide for both the leader and the party, it's probably going to be on about page 5 or 6 for things you can do. I still think that the American former president Richard Nixon still has page number 1. So this is a massive issue for Scott Morrison. Now, once again, it's not unrecoverable. However, he is going to have to start breaking election promises coming up towards the budget. And that's going to be a big issue. He promised to put Australia economically back into the black. Our debts are very high. Our debts are only going to go up because the bushfires and the droughts have taken out a lot of our food production. Okay, that's a problem. It's a major problem. And we may not have a recovery in those sectors for 6, 7, 8 years. If the drought keeps going, perhaps never. Okay, he has made decisions like allowing the Chinese, different Chinese corporations to buy up not a few hundred litres, not a few thousand litres, but a few million litres from the Great Artesian Basin, that's water, for a country that's dry and actually having major problems with water shortages across the board. These types of decisions are really what's going to end up rocking him. We don't go back into the black. Well, there's a broken promise. We're going to have more employment. That's not going to happen. There are businesses right now on the east coast of Australia. And by the way, if you're in Australia or you're an international person and you are thinking about cancelling your sojourn to the east coast or the west coast of Australia because of these fires, please don't. Please come here. We need your custom. We need your help. Okay, so if you're someone on the west coast thinking of going to the east coast, going, I'm not sure about, do it. And while you do it, go to some of these smaller towns and buy a coffee. Buy a coffee or a cup of tea or whatever you're into, and a croissant or whatever that they can provide, because they really need the help, because a lot of these towns survived on tourism as one of their main income streams. So don't cancel your holiday. In fact, plan one if you can. We need your help. Those small businesses will go under if we just go, well, we don't want to go there because there's been a bushfire here recently. But job numbers at the moment are reasonable. They're sitting somewhere in the 5 to 5.5% last time I checked. Reasonable. That's okay, but we are in trouble here in Australia, and Scott Morrison seems to be, some of the, obviously you can't account for natural disasters, but he's not changing his tune on the budget, and he's not changing his tune on unemployment, he's not changing his tune on interest rates and all these other things. It's like, Scott Morrison, you're going to crucify us, you moron. And he's leaving himself wide open in two different ways. There's two different possibilities I could see that the LNP are probably not going to be winning the next election. Let's say Scott Morrison stays in charge. Albanese really doesn't need to do anything, especially anything silly. In fact, at the moment he's being reasonably bipartisan, but that's not unusual in times of crisis for the opposition party to be bipartisan when it comes to helping people out. He's making all the right noises. We should help people more. We should do all these wonderful things. He's making the right noises. But he really doesn't need to do much. And when it comes time to the next election, if Scott Morrison is still the Prime Minister, all he needs to bring up is Hawaii and all these failed, broken promises of your first year as the Prime Minister. And the fact that your party backed you to continue to be the Prime Minister, irrespective of the fact that the public just did not want you there. Now, that would be a reasonable argument. The second thing would be is if the Liberal Party did what they did to Tony Abbott, and once the numbers get down to about 32, 33%, if they fall that far, which there's no guarantee they will, then they get rid of him. And there's already National Party MPs and senators who are saying we want to push this guy out. This guy is poison. We'll see what happens there. The National Party are not the largest part of the LNP, but there's already noises being made. Now, if they kick Scott Morrison out in a spill, a leadership spill, that's also the end of the LNP winning the next election, because of course, we are the grown-ups in the room. Tony Abbott was replaced by Turnbull, and Turnbull got replaced by Morrison, and now Morrison might be replaced by someone else, and people are just going to go, oh, here we go again. We're over it. We just want a leader. And of course, that would give huge amounts of power when it came to the debates and whatnot to, once again, Albanese and the Labor Party. They can absolutely hammer all these points home. So I think that the LNP have got to really work a trick here. Otherwise, they will lose the next election. There's no way around it. And if the Labor Party wanted to really play a trick, and I'm not saying they will, but if they really wanted to play a trick, they could get Scott Morrison's numbers down to, let's say 35. No, he's only 34. Let's say 34% popularity. And the Liberal Party obviously would be following him in approval, which they are, according to Newspoll, which would mean that the Liberal Party comes up with a bill and the Labor Party says no and no and no, and could trigger the Liberal Party putting in a double dissolution clause, which would mean effectively we'd go to an early election. Not saying that would happen either. This is not good for the LNP. And I don't know what Scott Morrison can do to recover from this. Once again, I'm not saying he is. I'm just going to play the devil's advocate here. I'll go for the he is in trouble rather than the he has done good things, because as of yet he hasn't done anything that I would consider, at least optically, a good thing. So we'll see how we go, but at the moment, my long-range prediction, which will no doubt change over time, will be the Labor Party will probably have the next election, especially if there is a double dissolution election. I'm Nathan Gooks-Fletcher. This is My Drunk Philosophy, and I'll catch you good people down the road. Uru! Be good.